Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode of Pursue. This is Pursue 7M, which is neuropathology. We are streaming live from the iconic, famous Calcutta Medical College, India, and a very pertinent and very interesting topic in pursuit of understanding the CNS5, explaining the recent changes in CNS tumor classification. To talk on that, we have the so well talented Dr. Sejuti Dasgupta. She is an MD DNB. Presently, she is an associate professor in the Department of Pathology at the Medical College Kolkata with multiple publications in index national and international journals. Before I ask Dr. Sajuti to start, please let me request you to keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, let me request, ma'am, please share your screen. Let's start.
Thank you, sir, for this opportunity. I respect this platform so much. I really hope I live up to its standards tonight. So I'll just share my screen. Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, please start. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. My topic today is In Pursuit of Understanding the CNS5. Now, I call it In Pursuit of because this is really a very vast topic. The fifth edition of WHO classification of CNS tumors is a very vast area, and today is really an attempt to become aware of at least some of the changes that have been spelled out. So WHO CNS5 builds on the updated fourth edition that appeared in 2016 on the many developments in the field that followed the 2016 classification and on the recommendations of the C-Impact Now. What is C-Impact Now? It is consortium to inform molecular and practical approaches to CNS tumor taxonomy. Now, this is a body that was created under the sponsorship of the International Society of Neuropathology in the late 2016 following publication of the WHO Blue Book. So after the WHO Blue Book 4th edition of classification of CNS tumors was published in 2016, C-Impact Now evaluated and recommended several changes in these classifications, and these have now been incorporated in the 5th edition. The renowned neuropathologist Dr. Professor Ori Perry has mentioned in one of his lectures that he, along with the others who form this body C-Impact Now, are more or less the same team that have drafted the WHO CNS5. So, on a lighter note, Professor Ori Perry has told us that this NOW of C-Impact Now in the year 2021 can be called now official WHO. So what are the changes that have been brought about in CNS5? We will classify these changes into general and specific. First, the general changes. There have been changes in tumor taxonomy, tumor nomenclature, gene and protein nomenclature, tumor grading. Novel diagnostic technologies have been taken into account. Something called NOS and NEC diagnosis have been included, and also integrated and layered diagnosis. So we will take up each one of these briefly, one at a time. First and foremost, the change in CNS tumor taxonomy. The WHO CNS5 follows a hybrid taxonomy. What does that mean? It means that various tumors have been classified according to various methods or schemes. For example, There are certain tumors that have been completely defined by the genetic changes. For example, the IDH or the H3 status. For other tumors, their types and subtypes have been defined by molecular features, for example, medulloblastoma. There are still others for which we rarely use molecular techniques. Histopathological diagnosis is sufficient, example being meningioma. Another change in the taxonomy, the term entity has been replaced by type, the term variant by subtype. Now, this is just to maintain uniformity across the WHO Blue Books of the other organ systems. Next, CNS tumor nomenclature. The tumor name in CNS5 will be accompanied by its location or its genetic modifier only when there is some clinical utility to it. So we will still call a neurocytoma as extraventricular or central because that has some prognostic implication. But chordoid glioma of the third ventricle will just be called chordoid glioma. Glioblastoma, the term will be accompanied by this genetic modifier IDH wild type. The term anaplastic has been removed. Gene and protein nomenclature. The CNS5 uses Hugo Gene Nomenclature Committee system for gene symbols and gene names. The Human Genome Variation Society recommendations for sequence variants. Gene symbols will be represented in italics, but proteins and gene groups will not be italicized. Also, a DNA sequence will have a prefix of C and an amino acid or a protein will be prefixed by P. So what was written previously as BRAF V600E will now be written as BRAF C.1799T2A P.Valin 600 glutamine. Coming to CNS tumor grading, what are the changes that have been made in CNS5 with regard to tumor grading? First and foremost, we will not call it WHO grade, we will call it WHO CNS grade. Why is that? Because at least in case of some tumors, the grading system used is unique to the CNS and it does not apply to the other organ systems. The next thing is Roman numerals will not be used anymore. The reason being, first, to maintain uniformity across the different WHO Blue Books of the various organ systems. Another thing is to minimize the transcription errors. A Roman 2 can be easily mistaken for a Roman 3, a 1 for a 2. So now we will be using Arabic numerals. Next, the neoplasms will be graded within the tumor types and not across different tumor types. Now, what does that mean? It means that previously, diffuse astrocytoma was a tumor type that belonged to WHO grade 2, anaplastic astrocytoma another type, WHO grade 3, IDH mutant glioblastoma, again another tumor type, which was assigned WHO grade 4. In CNS5, all these three tumors have been brought together and the entire thing is known as astrocytoma IDH mutant, and this tumor is now graded. So it is graded within the tumor types and not across the tumor types. Another thing which is interesting about CNS5 tumor grading is it is not absolutely necessary to grade each and every tumor, especially if it confuses clinical care. What does that mean? A Wnt activated medulloblastoma, for example, is an embryonal tumor which is highly aggressive only when it is left untreated. When it receives the correct treatment, the patients have long-term survival. So calling this Wnt-activated medulloblastoma a grade 4 tumor can create a lot of confusion. So when it confuses the patient, when it confuses the clinical care, it is not necessary to render a grade along with the report. Combined histological and molecular grading will be talked about in CNS5. So not only do we rely on histopathological features, certain molecular features can also be used to grade a tumor. We will deal with this in a greater detail in a little while. Novel diagnostic technologies have been incorporated in CNS5, one of them being molecular profiling approaches, for example, methylome profiling. Now comes this NOS and NEC diagnosis. NOS meaning not otherwise specified, NEC not elsewhere specified. When do we give NOS diagnosis? If there is limitation of resources and we know that there is a particular tumor which requires a molecular workup, but we do not have the facility, the resource to do that molecular workup, we just diagnose, we just render the report writing whatever it is that we have diagnosed and follow it up by writing an NOS. This sends a signal to the clinician that further workup is required to further classify the tumor. And when do we write not elsewhere classified? Suppose you are in a state-of-art facility with all kinds of resources at your disposal and you do every test that is required, but even after that, it is not possible to fit that tumor into a particular category of the WHO CNS5. Then you will write NEC. Why does this happen? Now this reminds me of what one of my best teachers kept on saying, that the responsibility does not lie on the tumors to read our books and to abide by their rules. So no matter how much we streamline our classification, there will still be a tumor that will not fit into the categories that we have defined. So this is the best that we can do under those situations. We will just write whatever we have discovered, descriptive writing, descriptive diagnosis as we say it, and then we will write NEC. WHO CNS5 encourages liberal use of NOS and NEC diagnosis. And the last general change is the use of layered integrated reports. This is the basic structure of a layered report. At the top of it, we will write the integrated diagnosis, which is a combined histological and molecular diagnosis, followed by the histological diagnosis, then the CNS WHO grade, and lastly, the molecular information. An example over here. The integrated diagnosis is diffuse low-grade glioma, MAPK pathway altered, subtype B, diffuse low-grade glioma, FGFR1 TKD duplicated. Histopathological classification is oligodendroglioma. CNS WHO grade has not been assigned, and the molecular information is duplication of the FGFR1 tyrosine kinase domain, which has been determined by NGS. We will come back to this example in a little while again. So this pretty much tells us all the general changes that have been defined in the WHO CNS5. Next, we will talk about the specific changes. First category is gliomas, glioneuronal tumors, and the neuronal tumors. In this category, in the 2021 classification, there are 6 groups of tumors: adult type diffuse gliomas, pediatric type diffuse low-grade gliomas, pediatric type diffuse high-grade gliomas, circumscribed astrocytic gliomas, glioneuronal and neuronal tumors, and ependymomas. what is the major change that has taken place? See this huge list over here? These were all the diffuse gliomas in the 2016 classification. This list has now been clubbed together under these three headings. All the diffuse gliomas now have been clubbed under the headings of adult type diffuse gliomas, pediatric type diffuse low-grade gliomas, pediatric type diffuse high-grade gliomas. So the major change is the division of diffuse gliomas into adult and pediatric types. There has been simplification of the classification of common adult type diffuse gliomas. The nomenclature and the grading of these adult diffuse gliomas have also changed. Now in this group adult type diffuse gliomas, we have three tumor types. The first one is astrocytoma IDH mutant. The second one is oligodendroglioma IDH mutant and 1p19q co-deleted. And the third one is glioblastoma IDH wild type. So what are the criteria for diagnosis of IDH mutant astrocytoma? First and foremost, we must get a diffuse glioma under the microscope. And it's pretty simple actually. After that, if you have the correct IHC markers, this is the marker IDH R132H. If the diffuse glioma turns out to be IDH1 positive and there is loss of this marker called ATRX, that is pretty much what is required to diagnose astrocytoma IDH mutant. So if you go back here, the essential diagnostic criteria for IDH mutant astrocytoma are this diffuse glioma, which is IDH mutant, and loss of nuclear ATRX expression. There is an OR over here, but in order to exclude 1p19q co-deletion, we have to have some genetic workup to be done. It is not necessary. For the diagnosis of IDH mutant astrocytoma, all we need is a diffuse glioma, that is on your routine slide, and then this IHC panel consisting of IDH1 and ATRX. P53 is mostly overexpressed in these tumors. Our next job would be to assign a grade to this astrocytoma IDH mutant. How do we grade this tumor? Again, pretty simple. In grade 2, there is no anaplasia. In case of grade 3, there is anaplasia, and in grade 4, there is microvascular proliferation or necrosis. Note here, in grade 3, there is significant mitotic activity. So not of as yet the CNS5. So this is pretty much subjective. So grade 2 and grade 3 by presence or absence of anaplasia, whatever is your cutoff of significant mitosis. And grade 4 when you have those classical features of microvascular proliferation or necrosis. Now here comes the role of a combined histological and molecular grading that we spoke about in the general change. Now suppose there is this diffuse glioma, which is IDH mutant astrocytoma, and we find on the molecular workup that there is homozygous deletion of CDKN2A. There are no anaplastic features otherwise, there is no microvascular proliferation, there is no necrosis, but on a molecular workup we find out that there is homozygous deletion of CDKN2A. Now that is itself a criterion to assign a grade of 4 to this tumor. So the role of combined histological and molecular grading, even though the histological features are not loud, they do not assign a higher grade to the tumor. If you get a molecular marker which is like this, which is defined in the criteria, that is sufficient to assign a grade of 4 to the tumor. So what are the criteria required to diagnose oligodendroglioma IDH mutant and 1p19q co-deleted? Again, a diffuse glioma under microscope, and then for the IHC markers, IDH1 is positive, ATRX is retained, P53 is usually not overexpressed, but in order to stamp the tumor as oligodendroglioma, we have to have this information. 1p19q code deleted must be documented by some kind of genetic workup. If this is not available, then comes your NOS diagnosis. If it looks like an oligodendroglioma and if these two markers give us the correct message, then we can write oligodendroglioma NOS, and the clinician knows that yes, it might be an oligodendroglioma, but this marker, the genetic workup, the molecular workup has not been done. And then of course we have to grade the tumor. Again, the same thing. It's either the presence or absence of anaplasia for assigning grades 2 and 3, and CDKN2A deletion once again is the molecular marker for assigning a higher grade to oligodendroglioma, pretty much similar to the IDH mutant astrocytoma. Next we have glioblastoma wild type, IDH wild type. So over here the essential diagnostic criteria, again you get a diffuse glioma and the IDH mutant factor is not there, the IDH is wild type. After that we need either histopathological characteristics like microvascular proliferation or necrosis to be present, or it could be molecular markers that are positive. For example, TERT mutation, EGFR amplification, any of these markers, if it is present on a molecular workup, that would be sufficient to assign the name glioblastoma IDH wild type to the tumor. So that I guess completes our adult type diffuse gliomas. Next we have pediatric type diffuse low grade gliomas. There are 4 types of pediatric type diffuse low grade gliomas. First one being diffuse astrocytoma MIB or MIB-L1 altered. Next is angiocentric glioma. Third, polymorphous low-grade neuroepithelial tumor of the young. And the fourth is diffuse low-grade glioma, MAPK pathway altered. This MAPK pathway altered diffuse LGG, it has 4 subtypes. One is FGFR1 TKD duplicated, FGFR1 mutant, diffuse glioma BRAF V600E mutant, and diffuse glioma other MAPK pathway altered. So going back to the example of the layered report that I had showed you before, so it was this tumor that we were talking about in that report. The diagnosis was diffuse low-grade glioma, MAPK pathway altered, and now we have seen the previous slide and we know that this is the subtype of this tumor, diffuse low-grade glioma FGFR1 TKD duplicated. Histologically, it looked like an oligodendroglioma. WHO grade was not assigned because low-grade pediatric type gliomas by definition are grade 1, and the molecular information was obtained by NGS. Now let's see this example over here. Suppose there is this young patient with a history of epilepsy, and we see that this is a tumor which has an oligodendroglioma-like appearance. There are some areas of anaplasia that you can see here. You do an IHC with CD34 and you find that it is typically strong and diffuse, and it's also positive in the peritumoral cortex. You can diagnose this tumor confidently as CLENTI or polymorphous low-grade neuroepithelial tumor of the young. It is one of the new types of tumors defined by the WHO CNS5, and it is precisely the characteristics of this tumor. So basically, if you're dealing with a pediatric low-grade glioma, the angiocentric glioma and CLENTI are the tumors which belong to this long-term epilepsy-associated tumors, and the diffuse astrocytoma MIB-L1 altered and the one with the MAPK pathway altered, these have insidious onset. So this is a basic idea, to give you a basic idea of the pediatric low-grade gliomas. Next we have pediatric type diffuse high-grade gliomas. 4 types again over here. First one being diffuse midline glioma H3K27 altered, diffuse hemispheric glioma H3G34 mutant, diffuse pediatric type high-grade glioma H3 wild type and IDH wild type, infant type hemispheric glioma. Now this midline glioma H3K27M altered was previously known as H3K27M mutant. Now, this name has been changed from mutant to altered because mutant was just one of the alterations that we had known before in the year 2016. But now we know that there are several other alterations possible which will lead to the same result. The result being loss of trimethylated glycine 27 of histone 3. So the other modes by which this can happen are EGFR mutation, EZIP overexpression. So all these together have been clubbed under this heading H3K27M altered, and these belong to the midline gliomas. The rest are hemispheric gliomas. So here you have this diffuse hemispheric glioma, H3G34 mutant infant type hemispheric glioma, and this diffuse pediatric type high grade glioma, H3 wild type and IDH wild type. These are all hemispheric gliomas. Now this is the IHC workup of diffuse hemispheric glioma H3G34 mutant. OLIG2 is negative. This is of course for the mutant protein. This IHC marker H3G34RV, this is positive, P53 is overexpressed, and ATRX is lost, mostly lost. So let's see this example now. Here what you're seeing is a patchy hyperintensity in the pons and the cerebellar areas. So it's more or less a midline tumor. Here what you get is a highly cellular glial neoplasm. Alright, and here there are brisk mitosis, if you can see. There is no microvascular proliferation, there is no necrosis. However, there is infiltration of these cells into the granular cell layer. Now this is an IHC workup with H3K27M. This is a mutant protein that is positive, and as a result of this mutation, the trimethylated glycine 27 of histone 3 is lost. So that is what is shown in this particular slide, that H3K27 trimethylation is lost. So once you get this, it is of course a diffuse midline glioma with H3K27M, we'll call it, okay, mutation. Now why I wanted to show this case is because this tumor was reported in an 83-year-old woman. So just to drive home the fact that pediatric type tumors can occur in adults, and it works the other way around as well. So what is the basic approach when you are faced with a diffuse glioma? So a diffuse glioma, on histology, we do a workup with IHC marker with IDH. If we find that that is mutated, but nuclear ATRX is retained, you're probably looking at an oligodendroglioma, but we need this information 1p1919q co-deletion. However, if along with IDH mutation, nuclear ATRX is lost, it is of course an astrocytoma, which is IDH mutant. We need to grade that tumor. If it is IDH wild type and nuclear ATRX is retained, we will look for evidence to stamp it as glioblastoma IDH wild type. It could be histopathological evidence with necrosis, microvascular proliferation. Molecular markers will help if available. However, if it is IDH wild type, nuclear ATRX mostly lost, and we find it is H3G34RV mutant, then we're looking at a diffuse hemispheric glioma, H3G34 mutant. So that is the basic approach for diffuse gliomas. Regarding glioneuronal and neuronal tumors, the new types are diffuse glioneuronal tumor with oligodendroglioma-like features and nuclear clusters, myxoid glioneuronal tumor, and multinodular and vacuolating neuronal tumor. Now let's just look at one of these new tumors. This is a tumor which has a septal location here. This is the histological feature of the tumor, oligodendrocyte-like cells with a myxoid stroma. This is a myxoid glioneuronal tumor, a new type defined in CNS5, and it is characterized by dinucleotide mutation in the PDGFRA gene. Moving on to the ependymal tumors. Now for the ependymal tumors in the WHO CNS5, we must mention the site of the tumor. It could be supratentorial, posterior fossa, or spinal ependymoma. And after mentioning the site, we need molecular information. Under supratentorial ependymoma, we have something called ZFTA fusion positive. This is actually the same as RELA fusion positive in the 2016 classification. This name RELA fusion has been replaced by ZFTA because it was found that the gene ZFTA is more responsible for this tumor than RELA gene. The other type is YAP1 fusion positive, and this supratentorial ependymoma, which is YAP1 fusion positive, has a worse prognosis compared to the ZFTA fusion one. Posterior fossa ependymomas are classified into PFA group and PFB group, PFA having a worse prognosis. Spinal ependymoma, there is a type called MYC-N amplified, and this has a very aggressive course, but it is a rare tumor. The other change in the ependymal tumors in CNS5 are these terms: papillary, clear cell, tannicydic. These were in the previous classification variants of ependymomas, but now they are just used in the histopathological description of the tumor. They are no longer recognized as subtypes of ependymoma. Another change, that is myxopapillary ependymoma. It was previously a grade 1 tumor. Now it has been upgraded to a grade 2 tumor because it has a higher likelihood of recurrence than what was previously thought about. The term anaplastic ependymoma has been removed. So I just wanted to show this picture that in ependymomas, the prominence of the individual processes in the perivascular pseudorosettes, now that varies markedly between ependymomas. And this is a picture from a patient who had neurofibromatosis, and we can see that the intercellular matrix of this ependymoma is densely fibrillar. Now let's look at this example. It's a typical one. It's a tumor that has occurred in the cauda equina region of young adults. And this is the typical histopathological appearance of the tumor. Fusiform cells in palisading arrangement intermixed with areas of mucin deposition. There are prominent hyalinized blood vessels. So you're looking at a myxopapillary ependymoma. Next, we have embryonal tumors. Now, the new types in embryonal tumors are cribriform neuroepithelial tumor. Then we have CNS neuroblastoma FOXR2 activated, and CNS tumor with BCOR internal tandem duplication. These are the new types that have been defined. A little bit about medulloblastomas. Initially, medulloblastomas were divided into 4 principal molecular groups: Wnt activated, sonic hedgehog activated, group 3 and group 4. In the 2016 classification, what happened was these group 3 and group 4 were in this group called non-Wnt, non-SHH medulloblastomas, and SHH medulloblastomas were divided on the basis of their p53 status. But now in CNS5, with large-scale methylation and transcriptome profiling, we have 4 subgroups of SHH and 8 subgroups of non-Wnt, non-SHH medulloblastomas. A change that has occurred in CNS5 again is this. In 2016 classification, there were 4 morphologic types of medulloblastoma: classic, desmoplastic or nodular, MBEN, which is medulloblastoma with extensive nodularity, and large cell or anaplastic. Now, all these have been combined in CNS5 and they are noted as medulloblastoma histologically defined. For molecular subgrouping of medulloblastoma, we use this panel: beta-catenin, GAB1, YAP1, filament A is mostly used, some centers use OTX2, and P53. So what we have here is for a Wnt medulloblastoma, the profile is beta-catenin positive, YAP positive, GAB negative. SHH medulloblastomas are beta-catenin negative, YAP positive and GAP positive, and non-Wnt, non-SHH are the ones which are beta-catenin, YAP and GAP negative. So with that, let's look at this. There is a lesion arising from the cerebellar vermis and extending to the roof of the fourth ventricle. And here you're looking at a typical small blue round cell tumor. And this is telling us this IHC workup. Over here, this is YAP, which is negative because it's mostly expressed in the endothelial cells. GAP1 is also negative. Beta-catenin is negative because this is cytoplasmic expression. You need a nuclear expression of beta-catenin to call it positive. Ki67 is highly expressed. So what we're looking at here is a medulloblastoma classic type, non-Wnt, non-SHH. Regarding other embryonal tumors, now CNS5 recognizes 3 molecular subtypes of ATRT, that is about atypical teratoid or rhabdoid tumor, and an ETMR, embryonal tumor with multi-layered rosettes with Dicer alteration, in addition to the more common C19MC type. Another type that has been included is this BCOR ITD, internal tandem duplication. This has now been included in WHO CNS5. But there is still confusion regarding this type because some people think that it is neuroepithelial, others find it to be mesenchymal. So the origin of this tumor is still a matter of controversy. So for these other embryonal tumors, the IHC markers that are of importance is INI1. When lost, we will have a diagnosis of ATRT. LIN28A, if it's positive, that helps in the diagnosis of ETMR, that is the embryonal tumor with multi-layered rosettes. And if a BCOR IHC is positive, perhaps we're looking at a CNS tumor with BCOR ITD. Let's look at this example now. There is a 3-year-old child with seizures. Here we have a heterogeneous mass lesion in the left frontal region with solid and cystic components. So this is a highly cellular tumor consisting of embryonal cells, lots of mitosis visible here. And here is the typical appearance of the multi-layered rosettes. See, these are the multi-layered rosettes. IHC of importance here is this one, which is showing a dot-like positivity for EMA. And this last one over here is LIN28A, that is intensely positive. So we are looking at an embryonal tumor with multi-layered rosettes. Now this example has been taken from a paper which studied a series of these tumors. So these tumors have circumscribed growth, palisading necrosis. We have perivascular pseudorosettes. There is glioma-like fibrillarity. IHC workup showing that GFAP is negative to sparse positive, OLIC to same, that is negative to sparse positive, new N is positive. EMA is not showing any dot-like positivity, but strikingly here we have a BCOR positive tumor. So we're probably looking at a high-grade neuroepithelial tumor with BCOR exon 15 internal tandem duplication. Moving on, meningioma. Now regarding meningioma, there were several types of meningiomas in the 2016 classification. In CNS5, we have only one type, and that is just meningioma. All the morphological variants are now reflected in the subtypes. We can of course grade the meningioma. The grading criteria have not changed. They are more or less the same as was defined in the previous edition of WHO CNS. So for grade 2 tumors, a high mitotic index, which is greater than equal to 4 per 10 high power field, that was required. And at least 3 of the 5 criteria, which are small cells, hypercellularity, macronucleoli, sheets of cells, spontaneous necrosis. And regarding anaplastic, that is WHO grade 3, we don't use anaplastic anymore. Okay, WHO grade 3 is excess mitotic activity, which is greater than equal to 20 per 10 high power field. Frank anaplasia, either a sarcoma or a carcinoma or a melanoma-like appearance. And of course, molecular markers have a definite role to play in CNS5. Now here we have a criterion, that is brain invasion, that was previously there in the 4th edition. But there is a little confusion about this. If a tumor is clearly benign and there is brain invasion, it is being thought of that this particular criterion is not sufficient to upgrade the tumor to grade 2. So that bit is still a gray area of CNS5 with regard to meningioma grading. Other changes to meningioma, chordoid and clear cell meningiomas, they have been upgraded to grade 2 because they have been found to have a higher likelihood of recurrence. So they do not belong to grade 1 anymore as in the previous edition, but now they have been assigned grade 2. Previously, rhabdoid and papillary morphologies were sufficient to call the tumor grade 3, but that has changed in CNS5. Now, just the presence of rhabdoid or papillary morphology in a meningioma will not upgrade the tumor to grade 3. We need certain other criteria. For example, the molecular biomarkers, CDK promoter mutation. These things will help to upgrade the tumor to grade 3. So I just wanted to picture of clear cell meningioma. This, of course, is the papillary type, and this is the papillary morphological pattern of meningioma now, and this is the rhabdoid morphological pattern. Now, regarding mesenchymal non-meningothelial tumors, there are certain new names. The only thing that has definitely changed over here is this hemangiopericytoma. This term has been removed. We only have solitary fibrous tumor. So whatever I have spoken of today, it's actually taken from this paper, which practically tells us anything and everything we need to know about the changes in CNS5. Now, as has been mentioned in this paper, that any classification, it represents the state of understanding of that particular field of science at that particular point of time. So clearly it's a work in progress which is bound to change in future. So it's really frustrating for a postgraduate student who is going to appear for an exam in a month's time when a new publication comes out and he or she has to mug it up. But at the heart of every new classification, there is perhaps a patient who will live a little longer in a slightly better way due to the progress made so far. And that puts matters in a different perspective altogether. And at the end of the day, that is the perspective we all are striving for. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. If you just stop sharing so that we can see you.
Yes, sir. 1 second, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sejuti. Very well done, very clear and very crisp. And I think this is the call for the day. Everybody needs to really understand this CNS5, the 5th edition of the CNS classification. And there's not much for me to add at all, anything here. Only thing I can just say to everybody who's listening and who will be listening subsequently is that we can always understand the trend. It's now all molecular. And we all need to start learning molecular pathology quite well. And if you must have noticed, just today only Jayati had shared one screenshot that the Bethesda thyroid is also having a lot of molecular now in the new classification which is on the process. There are a lot of people who are in the process of writing that down. And CNS people have been the first to define that. About 1.5 years back, they already started talking about molecular classification and talking about molecular in everything. And that is where it is going to stand for. The new soft tissue classification, which is on the way, it will be out in another 6 months' time, is only molecular. So the call of the day is that you need to really understand the jargon terminologies of molecular pathology and get into that. Wonderfully done, excellent and very crisp. And this is not all done. I think this is just one of it. I mean, we would definitely like you to come back again.
Thank you so much.
You're a wonderful speaker and a very good teacher.
Thank you, sir.
We would like to, come here and grace this platform and teach us much more. Yeah, we will definitely discuss with you. Get your time out. I know you're very busy. It's a real pleasure to have you here. And just 1 second, if you can just hold it.
Yes, sir.
Dr.
Yes, sir.
Sukanya Mondal says good evening, ma'am. Sneha Barman says good evening.
So these are all my students, sir.
They are your students who are, some of them are on the YouTube and some of them are on the Google Meet here.
Yes, sir.
And there are other people also on the YouTube. We'd request you to share the PDF of
Yes,
this
sir,
so
of
that we
course.
can upload that,
Yes, sir.
and we will share the recorded version of it with everybody as well. Thank you so much, Dr.
sir.
Kajoti. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye, sir.